StoryCraft Cafe. I am your host, Hank Garner, as always. Today, I am super excited to welcome my friend Kevin Tumlinson, the Wordslinger, and to the show today.
Hello.
Kevin has joined us once or twice before in the past, but I was just telling Kevin before we started recording that there is something brewing just under the surface. It has felt to me a reinvigoration of the indie publishing spirit. When I got into this, let's see, I published my first book in 2013. Had been kind of studying indie publishing for a couple of years before that. Kind of right at the where the wave broke in that first Kindle revolution, as it were. We kind of caught the tail end of that. I didn't get to ride that first wave, but I was there to report on it. As things kind of were shaking out, and through that time, in those early days, there was a real us versus them, David-and-Goliath kind of attitude, where the little guys were taking on the gatekeepers, and it was just this it was a whole vibe around it. And as the years have gone on, and TradPub has had to answer some of those things, and have had to change some of their practices and soften some of their stances on this and that. Now it is nothing to see an author that has a trad deal and indie published titles, and they kind of cross promote those, and it just really the thing that I've said over the last couple of years is this is one of the best times to be an author, because the author has a lot of control and gets to kind of choose the path that is best for them from all of the available tools, whether they be indie, trad, hybrid, all of that. But lately, and maybe for a lot of different reasons, there seems to be a reinvigoration of that indie spirit, that trailblazer kind of spirit, the take the bull by the horns and make it yourself kind of spirit. So anyway, that's kind of what I want to talk about today. Welcome, Kevin, to that long introduction.
It's a good thing that's what you want to talk about, because that's pretty much what I talk about now.
Yeah, so. I know. And, I've been we're Facebook friends, have been forever. And I've followed your YouTube channel, which is it the Wordslinger? Is that, or is it?
Yeah.
The
URL is supposed to be changing, but right now it's
okay.
The Wordslinger Podcast is I'm trying to change it to Wordslinger Show, because now I have 3 different shows under the same label.
Right.
Because there's the Wordslinger Podcast, which goes live every Thursday, and then I have my Wordslinger 10 Shots, which are supposed to be 10-minute videos, but tend to be 15 to 20 minute.
Right.
And then I just launched something over the past couple of weeks called Wordslinger Story Cuts, which is I review movies and streaming shows and books and things like that from a novelist point of view. So
love it.
I'm having to kind of change. It's interesting how the show has changed over the years, but yeah. And you're right. Totally right. I was kind of thinking about this too. It's like when I first started, I started during that sort of the original KDP, golden era. I didn't quite catch fire the way some people did during that time, but I did all right. And then I was thinking about it, like there was this era of sort of almost euphoric bliss, where it was sort of us against TradPub, no gatekeepers, no barriers to entry. And now it's like we're back to that to some degree. Like Draft2Digital now has a fee, $20 onboarding fee to protect against the AI slop, right, and the scammers. So it's all perfectly understandable what it's tended to do. The whole AI slop, AI witch hunt thing has kind of circled us back to those early days. Like now it's back to self-publishing is kind of and it's in the Wild West days again. And it's I don't know. It's funny because for a while there, Hank, I was telling everybody that, indie publishing is publishing now. It had taken over, and I still believe that. And then I've worked with some trad pub houses who wanted to be more like independent publishing. They wanted to learn all the tricks. They wanted to do the things, but they were the first ones to just completely wreck authors' careers if there was any whisper of AI to their work. And so now it's us against them again.
Yeah. And I didn't, like I told you earlier, I didn't necessarily want to get into the AI witch hunt, but I'm also not scared of it. And I am not scared of AI tools, especially in the ideation and the outlining and that portion of the process. I look at an AI chatbot, which I have highly configured for me. So it knows my writing. It knows, it's trained to think in the way that I would want it to. And I use it as like a writing partner that I bounce ideas back and forth. And I've used this analogy a lot that I can have a story idea. If I sit down with a friend, if you and I over a cup of coffee, Kevin, start talking about the story idea I had, I'll say some stuff and you will say, oh, that would be cool if you did this. And then all of a sudden that would trigger new synapses and neurons and my brain would start firing in a way that I never could by myself. And then because of our interaction back and forth, the story grows to a place that it just never could before. And that's kind of how I treat my my AI chatbot.
It's like a writer's room.
Exactly, like a writer's room. Yeah. And so I know some people. This is the thing that kind of gets me, and some people think if a book was written with the use of AI anywhere in the process, the idea they have is that you type in a prompt, write me a science fiction novel, click, and then 80,000 words comes out. It is nowhere near that. And and so, you've got this misnomer that people just double down on, and then the fear comes in, and then all of a sudden people are carrying pitchforks.
So what's funny is I'm old enough to remember this exact same conversation about Photoshop, about nonlinear video editing, about CGI in movies. This keeps coming back over and over again because people just fear change. They fear replacement. And it's astounding to me to hear some of the things that people will say. I make a lot of content around this now, and so I get a lot of comments that, just the mention, if I say at all that, a writer can use AI to help them, spell check and grammar check. I'll get 100 comments from trolls saying, if you used AI at all, if you even used the letters A and I together, you're not a real writer. You should be taken out into the streets and beaten and flogged. So this is where I think that's a part of it, but it's not the whole of it. I think that you're right in that there is a resurgence, a kind of a renaissance of self-publishing as you and I have known it.
Right.
Because there was an evolution in this version of self-publishing. It had meager beginnings. It started with, I could use something like CreateSpace and Amazon to publish my book. Then, Smashwords. I can use Smashwords to go to other stores. And if I'm willing to let my book go through the meat grinder at Smashwords, I can go to other places. And then in 2012, Draft2Digital came along and made that process a lot easier. And I was very grateful. And I eventually worked with them. I was their director of marketing for like 7 years. So I got to see the evolution of the industry, the self-publishing industry, into what it became, which was a very cooperative, very assistive, resource-filled business, right?
Yeah.
Anybody, no barriers to entry, no cost or overhead. You can just publish. Years, and I'd say this is since 2020. That's skewed, and now there are more barriers to entry. There's more tools than ever,
Right.
but there are now associated costs with some of those tools that weren't there before. And then just AI sort of, I don't know, it shook something loose. And I get on my channel on YouTube, I get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments from people who are just starting out in this. And it's all, Hank, it's weird. It's the same conversations I've had since 2008. You know, since especially 2013 when I started doing podcasts about this, the same conversations that all those early days, and so I'm kind of regurgitating the same information that I've always used, but now with more hindsight, more expertise, more success behind my belt. So you know, it's kind of amazing, really. It really is a rebirth. You know, it really is a renaissance of this business, especially as it becomes more dangerous to go into trad pub than it's ever been. And you've heard these stories, I'm sure, about, you know, like the author who had a bidding war over his book, had a pending like $2.4 million deal. And his agent, of all people, pulled the deal and just called him out of the blue to tell him. You know, I watched some stuff lately that talked about how he even learned about it. What a blow to go from, you know, this morning I was a hotshot success. I was on my way, and today I am a leper.
Right.
You know, among the pristine. And it's just to me, I think what's happened is it's just one more more gate. You know, now it's everyone is guilty until proven innocent in this game, where they're going to assume you're AI, and then they're going to use AI to try to prove that you're AI. And then if there's any hint or whisper of it, then you're guilty and you deserve to be punished. Even though there's no laws against any of this, by the way, they're just going to destroy your career, your life, your dream, you know. So I think that's what's pushing a lot of this growth in self-publishing. I've had, like I said, hundreds of people comment on that. I was going to traditionally publish, but with everything that's been happening, I don't want to go through that. So I'm just going to indie publish.
Well, I have a literary fiction kind of coming of age story. Think along the lines of Stephen King's The Body, you know, which became Stand By Me. Very much kind of in that vein. And I've been writing it. I had this great idea, you know, like great ideas do. They just kind of come to you, and you're like, oh, I want to chase that. And it really kind of turned into this thing that I don't necessarily write, but I was really enjoying it. I was like, you know, maybe I'm gonna shop this around and try for a trad deal. And then all of this stuff started coming out, and I just it's just not looking very appetizing, shall we say?
Right. Yeah. I have some trad deals now. I started my career with a traditional deal, but I've been indie publishing now for years, and I have 2 or 3 things that are on the traditional side, and I don't know what'll happen there. Part of me wants to kind of pull a 2006 Kevin and buy back the deals, because it really has become more dangerous to go that route, because if you have people who are your detractors, who don't like you for some reason, or who are just trolls who like to stir up trouble, you know, the accusations start. Somebody runs your book without your permission through Pangram or some other bogus, scammy AI detection software,
right? Which is at its heart powered by AI,
right? And I had someone comment today to say that they had used an AI detection, and it said that this book that they wrote was 100% AI. And they said, I didn't even use AI to spell check or anything, but it offered to help, quote unquote, humanize the text for them, so that it would pass an AI detection. And all it would take was for him to upgrade to their premium service.
Of course.
So I'm like, okay, there's several games going here.
You're right.
I honestly think these things are using. Oh, there you are.
Yep. I lost you. You kind of froze and went all max headroom on me there for a minute.
I don't know what's happened there, but you've heard of the whole the Claude fingerprint watermark thing, right?
Yes.
So I've learned some things about that, and the way Claude's
I've done
doing
a little
that.
digging into it as well, but I'm interested to see your thoughts on it.
Well, I found out that the way that watermark works is something Google actually created. But what it does is when Claude generates text for you, if it comes to, there's certain key words, and there's probably millions of them, that when it comes to it, it's going to make a choice, like flipping a coin. So if you, for example, the wind is going to be breezy or gusty. And so it is going to always default to the one that is statistically isn't used by humans very often. So it's going to use gusty, we'll say. I'm making these up. I don't know that this is in there. Don't quote me.
Sure.
And then, one or two occurrences of that, it's not going to be flat or whatever. But if you have, 80,000 words and you used Claude to generate all of them, then it's going to be all those statistical anomalies adding, sort of a specific range. And that would be the indication that it was written by Claude. And it can match that against a sort of record of in-house record. It's not going to be able to match and say, oh, that was user Kevin Tumlinson, and that the book we worked on together was this or whatever. It just knows that statistically all those words appearing in that manuscript AI. So fine. I've seen lots of people saying, well, you can beat that just by rewriting it, which I'm like, yeah, well, you should not be using Claude to generate your book. It's not, I don't think it's intended for that. So,
exactly. And I would even offer this, that, and I'm just going to be as generous as I can be, because everyone has different writing processes. Some people love the planning part of it and hate the first draft, but then love the editing.
Yeah.
Some people some people hate the outlining and the building blocks of the story, but they love that first draft, and then they hate editing. And so people might use an AI helper at various stages, but whichever stage you use it, you should not, even if you, and this is going to make a lot of people mad, but even if you use it to generate some first draft copy that then you go over and you edit, move things around, rewrite whole sections, whatever, you shouldn't be taking what Claude spits out and then submitting that. That should never be the process.
That should never be because then you're really not writing,
Yes.
But I've talked to, so one of the points I've made in some of my videos was that there are legitimate uses for AI to do some of the writing for you. Yeah. In one instance of that is people who don't speak English as their native language or first language, but also people who have disabilities. They might have physical or cognitive disabilities that impact. And the reason I bring that up is because I have met some of these people. They came to me after I posted and said, I'm so glad you talked about that, because I have this condition or this disability. one guy literally is quadriplegic and uses AI to capture, and translate his what he says and help him formulate it into chapters. And, he writes his books that way. It's just an assistive technology. So we're demonizing this thing. And, there's plenty of people who are sure that's, if you need AI to help you write, then you're not really a writer. And I kind of get where you're coming from, except it's kind of a well, I don't want to use any family unfriendly language on here, but it's a move of sorts, So yeah. So anyway, but that's like, I keep accidentally steering us back to AI as the topic, but
no,
the whole idea. No, I think it's part of what's happening, though.
I think it really is too.
Where it comes from for me. It's one of the drivers, and what I'm seeing is a rebirth of people who are eager to learn more about how publishing works in general. Which I remember those early days, man, when I was listening to like Johnny, Sean, and Dave on the Self-Publishing Podcast, yes. Joanna Penn on Creative Pen Podcast.
Oh, yeah. The Self-Publishing Podcast, I used the analogy that they came up with where I forget who it was. One of them wanted to write a Western and was afraid of not getting all the details right. So they just added a unicorn. And because once you add a unicorn to a story, all bets are off. And which was
right.
a piece of advice I've held on to for 15 years,
Yeah. It's very similar to, I was having a discussion with Don King show, YouTube video recently. And we were talking about how he wrote a short story and he didn't know how to end it. And so he just, and then the spaceship blew up, the end, and I told him, I know that you see that as a failure on your part, but there, I have had moments when like I'm stuck and I don't know where we go from here. I don't know how the good guys escape this situation. So I blow up the spaceship and then I say, somehow they had to survive. How'd they do that? What's going on? What really happened? And then, it can open up new doors. So sometimes you just got to shove a unicorn in there or blow up the spaceship.
Right. I love it. So to shift gears a little, but not really, you had a video recently, and I think I've heard you talk about this in the past. I think this was a topic that had kind of resurfaced for you. The idea of owning local, like I am my local, archaeological thriller author or whatever. And my coworker Abby and I were talking about this the other day because she writes middle grade and young adult novels, and she's really had this idea of and she lives in South Florida and kind of has scoped out all of these places that she could really kind of own as the local middle grade author. And so tell me your thoughts about that, because during the indie publishing revolution, we all got into publishing because we thought, number one, we thought we had a story to tell that would resonate with somebody. Yeah. And hopefully, we don't spend half a year to a year writing a book that no one reads. So we hope that as many people get their hands on this as possible. And so that, naturally makes you think of, going global, and, Amazon provides a huge stage for, and all of this. But that's not necessarily what you need. That's a real mind shift for a lot of people to stop thinking these dreams of global stardom. Because you can be perfectly happy being the local guy and sell plenty of books.
Yeah. What I was kind of riffing on was that idea of your 1,000 true fans.
Yeah.
There was a book by that title. I can never remember that guy's name for some reason. It'll come to me in the middle of a sentence somewhere. But so we all start this hoping that we're going to become an international success, all the tools are there for us to distribute worldwide. So do it. Go ahead and go to Kindle, go to Draft2Digital, go to Kobo, get your books to every major retailer online. That's fine, but that is fine and that can work out for you. But the trouble is we also tend to say, well, I want to sell worldwide, not just be selling. I don't want to just be available worldwide. I want to make sure that everyone in every country sees my ads, for example. And if you want to blow through thousands of dollars on an ad budget on Facebook, the best way to do that is to advertise to every single region, or even just multiple regions, or even just the entirety of the United States. Because Facebook's going to put that ad in front of as many people as your money will stretch to inside the US. And it's not always all that targeted. The whole 1,000 true fans idea was if you had 1,000 true fans, you could make a good living from your work because they would buy a copy every time you sold something. So I had the realization a couple of years ago, really, that, well, I was living in Austin at the time. Mm-hmm. I bet there's 1,000 people in Austin. If I want to have 1,000 true fans, why do I have to try to find them around the globe? Why can't I concentrate my efforts? So I took on a sort of 50-mile radius and said, I'm going to work as hard as I can to own this 50 miles. I'm going to be the writer for this 50 miles around me in every direction. I'm going to hit every bookstore. I'm going to go to farmers markets. I'm going to target my advertising here. And I'm even going to just lean in. Hey, it's your local author, J. Kevin Tumlinson. I'm your guy, Austin's #1 thriller writer, and that works. And then when you've seen some success from that, you say, okay, I'm going to expand my bubble. I'm going to go out another 25 miles, another 25. Pretty soon you go from, here I am in, Podunk, Texas, to here I am in all of the greater Austin area or the greater Houston area. And now I'm the author of this region of Texas, all of Texas, and then start hitting the states outside, the key there is you're building an audience in iterative steps, starting local. If you can just dominate local, you will make a living and probably be pretty profitable, and you can turn some of that profit over into funding the rest of your growth. What we tend to do is say, I need to be global right now. I need to get my fame. I need to get my notoriety now, instead of focusing on how do I become the most popular guy within 50 miles of here. And if you do that second step, if you do it that way, your growth will be faster. Nobody talks about it. Like, I've never heard anybody give that advice until I realized the way to do it. There's a million in your county, make sure that every one of them. Am I still recording? Did it drop out?
Yeah. You dropped out just a little bit, but you're solid.
Okay. Get yourself into every library you can. Make sure every library in your county has a couple of copies of your book, even if you have to be the one to donate them, right?
Yeah.
Make friends with every bookshop in your neighborhood, in your area. Go into every coffee shop and ask them, hey, what would it take for me to come here and do a signing, a couple of times every 2 months or something? I'll pay for some coffee, or I'll bring some ads, or I'll bring copies for your staff, whatever. But ingratiate yourself to as many people as you can locally, to where you can't be avoided, right? The way a lot of brands became mega brands was they made themselves completely unavoidable. You can't do that if globally or even nationally on a budget of $500 a month or something. You just can't. Yeah. But you can do that in a 50-mile radius of your home. And most people live within in a 50-mile radius. There's going to be several thousand, maybe thousands of people. So if you can just become so well known, the add-on effect to that is the people who discover you and like you will evangelize on your behalf. They're going to say something. Have you read Kevin's book? here, I just read this book from Hank, you got to read it. And so pretty soon you don't even have to make the effort to expand this.
Hello.
I'm with you. I don't know what's going on, man. I'm sorry about that. I show full signal on my side, so I don't know why it's doing that.
So do I, and that's what's so weird. I don't get it. And anyway, I was going to say I think I got the gist of what you were saying, but I live in a very small town in rural Mississippi, but my county has 100,000 people in it, and
right,
and there's all sorts of little businesses and things all around the county. I mean, even in one of the most rural, remote areas. I mean, we do have I-20 and I-59 converge in our town, so we get lots of traffic through here. But there's plenty of places when you change your mindset to think in that way. Another thing that I've seen a lot of talk about online over the last couple of years is direct sales, and people almost, I don't want to say souring on Amazon and KDP, but just realizing that that's not the only game in town, because one of the biggest arguments against the Kindle revolution was, well, you got to put all of your eggs in Amazon's basket, and and that scared some people, as it should. Like, we're not here just to toot Amazon's horn. I mean, they've done tremendous things for the author community and the indie author community specifically that cannot be denied. But it is a mega corporation that kind of is in control of everything, and that it seems to me that your idea of owning local really kind of disarms that explosive that everyone is worried about. Because if your book goes viral on Amazon, God love you. That's congratulations. But if you have that 1,000 true fans close to home, you can afford for things to go a little sideways on Amazon.
Yeah, and that idea of having your own direct sales option, a lot of people are having a lot of success with that. Mostly people have success with it if they've already built their audience and their platform.
Sure.
So I wouldn't recommend it to people who are just starting out per se, except in one instance, which is build your direct store, but don't try to push people to it as the only way to buy your book. If you've only got one or two books, allow them to go out and buy it on Amazon and elsewhere if they choose. Make your store an option, but don't make it front and center, because what you're going to do is over time, you're going to build that audience. You're going to build that mailing list, which everyone should have on an email list. Okay. That's still, even today, after 20 years of this, it's still the best advice. But what you want to do is build up that platform. And then if something ever happens, you've still got the digital storefront you can send people to where you make a higher royalty. And then people who discover it may buy their books from you on that platform. But what you want is that growth on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and others. Use Draft2Digital to get to those places, and then the growth happens sort of organically, because you never know when your book is going to be the next, like The Martian, or one of these indie titles that just rockets to stardom. So you don't want to cut yourself off at the knees before you ever even get started on that. But if you have a direct sales platform, that's a great way to sort of shore your bets a little, make sure you've got a safety net. So that if Amazon ever does just randomly turn off your account, which happens, no one knows why, no one knows when it'll happen. But if it ever does happen,
rare, but it's not rare enough that nobody knows about it.
It's not rare enough that you don't hear about it.
Exactly.
So if you ever wake up one day and Amazon has shut you off and you can't get it turned back on, you can at least start pointing people. And by the way, if you have a platform by then, and you say, Amazon's screwing me and they're no longer they've shut my account off and won't talk to me about it, So, hey, why doesn't everyone just go to my site and buy my books there?
Right.
You know, it'd be a great advertisement.
It's kind of the Brandon Sanderson thing. You know, he had that massive Kickstarter a couple years ago, and broke all the records, and became an indie publishing success with that.
Yeah.
But that whole thing was really built on the back of Tor, who had financed his writing for all of those years. Not financed, but they were his publisher and helped with. I mean, he obviously made fans, but that can't be discounted. But he had a massive machine behind him, and then decided to indie publish these books. And so people will come out and say, well, I'm just going to do a Kickstarter, and apples and oranges. But so here's a specific point that I'd like for you to put on. When you're building a local following, how long should you give yourself to do that? Or is this something you should always cultivate while doing other things? And before you do that, do you recommend someone have a certain number of books under their belt that they would, or if they write one book that they're really proud of, should they go out and start, hawking that book locally, or should they have 5?
Look, I think local is a solid starter strategy if you've only got one or a few books. But it's also an ongoing strategy that works really well, even if you've been around for a while. Like I've got a platform, I've got a good audience, and focusing on local, it kind of creates a nice steady stream of revenue, and it's almost like an additional stream of revenue. There's nothing to say you can't, even if you start off, you've only got one book, and you start focusing on local. That's fantastic. If you have the budget to put it out there globally, by all means, if you've got the budget and the expertise and the resources to do that, don't let this stop you. This isn't an edict. None of these are rules. Sure. None of this is a rule. What I'm suggesting is, if you're fresh, you're starting out, and you don't have the budget or time to try to dominate the world market, just focus on how do I become known. I'll give you a great example is like when early days, I would go around to various like junior highs and high schools with some of my books because they're very family friendly, no language, no sexual content. So I would get in well with English teachers in all the schools around Houston and the greater Houston area. And I did like 100 different talks to these schools. Like I'd say, if you need an author to come by and talk to your students about, reading and writing, I'm your guy. And so I'd do that. Well, they would do me the favor of 1, buying copies of the book to put in their library. And 2, they made the book available for sale to the students before I showed up, if the students wanted to buy a copy. So I'd sell, a few thousand copies of my book in the course of like 3 months by just going around talking to schools and libraries. So,
which is exactly how Christopher Paolini got started.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and the whole story of Aragon getting published was because he owned his local community, and an agent was passing through on vacation and bought it at a drugstore, I think it was, for his kid. And the rest is history. So this is not a new concept. This is something authors have been doing for as long as we've been putting word to paper.
I think we forgot, though. I think people forgot about this idea. And what's funny is that now you and I have tools and resources to make a professional, high quality book that if some of those earlier guys had even a fraction of what we have access to, they would rule the world right now, because they had to scrimp and save and pay for vanity press and, a whole bunch of things that we don't have to deal with, Right. So it's kind of hearkening back to an earlier age in a way. It's funny because in the early days of all this, I started referring to indie authors as being modern day pulp fiction writers. Yeah. Because that was the model that was closest to what we were doing.
Yeah.
And now it's like the current incoming crowd of independent publishers, they're aping the model from early days of indie publishing.
Yes.
As we define it. Like they're looping back now and using our methods with modern technology and modern offerings that I didn't have. You and I didn't have Vellum. I didn't have Vellum. I would have killed for Vellum. I laid out all my early books in Microsoft Word.
Didn't we all? And I knew a bunch of people that made their covers in Microsoft Word.
Yeah.
Made 10 grand on an opening weekend. I mean, there's some wild stories back then. But
I think we're kind of getting back to that now because of the shape of the industry.
Yeah, and I don't. That's what we were talking about in the beginning, is that it's just a feeling. There's this excitement in the air like I haven't felt in over 10 years, because indie publishing kind of matured, became a real alternative to traditional publishing, and then a whole industry cropped up around indie publishing. With you could pay for as much money as you wanted to pay. You could pay for all of the services that support the publishing industry. And then before long, you're right back to the trad model where, you're not getting, but you're putting all the money up front, but you're still paying for everything like you do in trad pub. Because let's be honest, they give you some money up front, but you're paying for everything. And you may never see any money again.
I'm astounded. My first traditional deal, I knew I was going to have to do some of my own marketing, some of my own promotion stuff, but I at least got, a pretty good advance from that. And now the advances are much lower if you get one at all. And the expectations are much higher. And I'm like, well, how is this better than me? Their relationship with Barnes & Noble and other bookstores to be able to put my book in there is great, but it's only if they believe in the book enough to pay Barnes & Noble to make it a front-facing book, or put it at the front table or whatever. And most books, if you go to any given bookstore, not an independent bookstore, but at least commercial stores like Barnes & Noble and others, most of the titles in there are spine out books, right? Yes. So unless someone's willing to browse those aisles and pick it out and take a look and read the first couple of pages, you don't get the same exposure. So I'm like, what benefit am I really getting? I'm on the hook for a whole bunch of obligations with this now. I have the risk of someone accusing me of AI or some, maybe they just accuse me of something that is culturally inappropriate. I've seen a lot of authors get brought down through Me Too accusations and things like that. There's a lot of risk to it that the publisher could turn on you. The publisher doesn't seem to have their back. Well, if I got to take all those risks anyway, why not just own the whole thing, make more money from it, not give someone else as big a cut? Because frankly, by the time everyone takes their piece, it's like the old man in the sea. He's coming back with that big marlin strapped to his boat, and all the sharks keep taking chunks out of it. Like it's the same thing. I'm the one who had the book that everyone bid on, and I've got a $2 million deal. Maybe most people aren't going to get that, but by the time everybody takes their piece, what comes back to me is just the skeleton of the thing.
Right.
Barely enough meat on the bones to feed me. So contrast that with, like, I own my own direct sales platform where I currently make 97% royalty. And if I paid $100 a month, I could make 100% royalty. So the numbers are starting to kind of work a little more in my favor. If I'm, if I have to be the engine behind everything, I might as well make all the money.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I think that's a great place to land this, Kevin. So how do you feel about the future of indie publishing? There's there's a lot of times we'll go through periods of turmoil and then periods of peace and quiet where we get lax and allow things to creep in. And then that leads to periods of turmoil and chaos, and which leads to innovation. And, what the cycle is like. What do you see on the horizon for publishing in general? And how do you feel that indies?
I have not seen the publishing industry as divided as it is now since those early days. And a lot of it is being fed by the AI conflict, we'll say. What I see happening is the mistake would be for traditional publishing to lean in on that as a form of taking back control of the industry, because indie publishing isn't subject to any of it. So if you make the accusation that this successful indie publisher has used AI in writing their book, the impact of that is negligible, because frankly, the readers, if they hear about it at all, probably don't care. And if they're like that author, if they follow me and they like me and I say I didn't do it, then that's the end of the discussion for 90% of them. Whereas in the traditional world, the publisher stops backing you, stops supporting you, drops you. So they'll end up losing this fight because the indie publishers don't need them. We don't need TradPub, especially if we're focused on things like, owning our local markets, growing organically, being out there and building a platform that's based on us and our brand. As long as we're creating work that people want to read, there's no need for the traditional publisher at this point. And so what I see, you asked, like, where do I see it going? I think in the next 5 years, I joke and say that traditional publishing is dead. I think it's going to stick around for a good long time. But what it's doing is slowly adopting indie publishing strategies and methodologies. Look at Simon & Schuster. They are basically an indie publisher with traditional reach. I think they'll all start doing that, and then the whole landscape becomes completely unrecognizable at that point. And it won't matter. The labels will no longer exist. No one's going to call me an indie publisher or a traditional author. They're just going to see me and say, that's Kevin Tumlinson, the author.
Right.
That's where I think it's headed. I think it's been headed that way for a long time, but the current events are exacerbating the whole evolution. So traditional publishing and indie publishing are just merging, is what I think is happening.
I think the future's bright, Kevin.
I do too. Yeah. I'm counting on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, tell the audience where to find you. The Wordslinger, we talked about the Wordslinger podcast.
Yeah.
The YouTube channel. Tell us about your writing, where folks want to get plugged into your thrillers, which I've long been a fan of, and the other stuff that you do.
Yeah. Everything I do, the hub of all my digital life is at kevintumlinson.com. And that's where you'll find my books. You'll find a link to my Substack, which I highly recommend you subscribe to and read, and links to the Wordslinger podcast and the Writers Inc. podcast and all the other things that I do. Everything's there. kevintumlinson.com. Hard to spell, but worth the effort.
We'll put it in the show notes to make it easy for folks to find. Tumlinson's not that hard to spell. Once you see it, it makes sense.
Once Kevin, you guys, three syllables, 3 letters per syllable, you got it. You got it nailed.
That's right. That's right. Take care, my brother. See you later.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me, man.